You don't think of yourself as lazy. You have goals. You make plans. You even feel a genuine desire to move forward. But yesterday afternoon, you told yourself you would start that important task first thing in the morning. And this morning, when the time came, you opened your phone instead. Not for long. Just a few minutes. Then a few more. By the time you looked up, the urgency had faded. The task still mattered, but the emotional edge was gone. And with it, your momentum. That is how laziness works. Not as dramatic rebellion. Not as open refusal. But as quiet delay that feels reasonable in the moment and expensive later. Laziness does not destroy you in a single decision. It weakens you through small permissions, the harmless scroll, the postponed workout, that I'll start after lunch. Each one feels minor. Together, they reshape your standards. In this video, you're going to understand why laziness feels justified when it happens, the internal patterns that protect it, and the specific mental shift that stops it before it compounds. Not through hype. Not through guilt. Through structure. If you want to destroy laziness, you need to see its structure clearly. It operates through three internal mechanisms. First, emotional negotiation. The moment action feels uncomfortable, your mind searches for a softer alternative. This is not weakness, it is avoidance of friction. You tell yourself the delay is temporary, but the delay becomes the pattern. Second, self-licensing bias. You justify an action because you've done something productive earlier. I worked hard yesterday. I deserve a break. The brain uses past effort as permission for present relaxation. The result is uneven discipline, intense bursts followed by collapse. Third, future discounting. The long-term cost of laziness feels abstract. The short-term comfort feels immediate. The brain is wired to prefer immediate relief over distant reward. So you choose what feels better now, and underestimate what it will cost you later. Consider a simple example. A professional decides to improve their skills after work. At 6 p.m., they feel tired. They say, "I've already done enough today." They scroll for 30 minutes instead of studying. Nothing dramatic happens. But repeat that choice 5 days a week, and months later they wonder why progress feels slow. Laziness is not loud. It is consistent. Over the next sections, we'll break down how to interrupt emotional negotiation, remove self-licensing, and reverse future discounting, so comfort stops controlling your decisions. The first shift is this: end the negotiation immediately. Laziness survives in the space between decision and action. The longer you wait after deciding to do something, the more time your mind has to introduce alternatives. You do not suddenly become lazy. You become uncertain for a few seconds, and in that uncertainty, comfort makes its case. Imagine you plan to work out after work. You arrive home, sit down just for a minute, and open your phone. In that small pause, the internal dialogue begins. You've had a long day. You can go tomorrow. Rest is important too. None of these statements are completely false. That is why they are dangerous. The solution is not emotional intensity. It is speed. When you decide, move within 5 seconds. Stand up. Change clothes. Open the laptop. Begin the first small action. The faster you transition from decision to movement, the less space negotiation has to grow. This is not about aggression. It is about reducing delay. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. Jim Rohn. A bridge only works if you step onto it. Standing near it does nothing. Likewise, deciding without moving changes nothing. The second shift, remove self-licensing. Self-licensing is subtle. You feel productive in one area, and you allow yourself to relax standards in another. You save money this month, so you overspend next month. You eat clean all week, so you overindulge on the weekend. You work intensely for 2 days, then drift for 3. This creates emotional balance but destroys consistency. Consider finances. Someone commits to saving a portion of their income. For 2 months, they are disciplined. Then a small bonus arrives. Instead of investing it, they rationalize a purchase. I've been responsible. I deserve this. The purchase alone does not destroy their finances. The pattern does. Laziness often hides behind reward. To break this, separate reward from standards. Your standards should not fluctuate based on mood or recent effort. They remain stable regardless of how you feel about yourself that day. A grounded example. A manager I once observed committed to daily strategic planning for 30 minutes each morning. For the first week, she followed through. On the 8th day, a meeting ran long. She told herself she would skip planning just this once. The next day, the urgency felt lower. Within 2 weeks, the practice disappeared. Nothing dramatic happened. No crisis. Just erosion. When standards are negotiable, laziness finds an opening. The third shift, make the future visible. Future discounting happens because consequences feel distant. When you delay improvement, nothing immediately collapses. Your health does not fail overnight. Your career does not end in a week. So the brain concludes that delay is harmless. But compounding works both ways. If you skip reading 20 minutes today, nothing changes. Skip it 5 days a week for a year, and you've lost over 80 hours of growth. If you postpone exercise today, you feel fine. Postpone it consistently, and your energy baseline slowly declines. Laziness destroys gradually. To counter this, attach present decisions to future identity. Ask a different question. Not do I feel like doing this, but who am I becoming if I repeat this choice for a year? That question collapses the distance between now and later. Now we need to address something uncomfortable. Many people confuse laziness with lack of motivation. They wait to feel driven before they act. But motivation is unstable. Energy fluctuates. Circumstances shift. If your action depends on emotion, consistency becomes impossible. The real issue is identity. If you see yourself as someone who tries, then inconsistency feels acceptable. Trying implies effort without guarantee. But if you see yourself as someone who executes regardless of mood, then skipping action conflicts with who you believe you are. This is where responsibility becomes powerful. No one interrupts your scrolling. No one enforces your standards when you are alone. Laziness thrives in private. It survives in moments without supervision. Destroying laziness means strengthening private integrity. Consider social boundaries. You commit to limiting time around people who drain your focus. But when they invite you out, you hesitate to decline. You don't want discomfort. You don't want tension. So you go. You return home late, exhausted, and your personal goals suffer. Again, nothing dramatic. Just drift. Laziness is not always physical inactivity. Sometimes it is avoidance of necessary discomfort, difficult conversations, strategic planning, long-term thinking. To break this pattern, pre-decide your response to predictable situations. If you know you will feel tempted to delay, define in advance what you will do. When I get home, I change clothes immediately. If I feel like postponing, I start for 5 minutes anyway. Pre-decisions remove emotional debate. There is also a rhythm component. People often overcommit when inspired. They design extreme routines. Wake at 5 a.m. Train daily. Study nightly. Within weeks, fatigue builds. When energy dips, the system collapses. They conclude they are lazy. In reality, they created an unsustainable structure. Destroying laziness does not require intensity. It requires repeatable standards. Modest, consistent, firm. If you commit to 10 focused minutes daily and protect them without exception, you build reliability. Reliability builds confidence. Confidence reduces negotiation. And negotiation is where laziness hides. Finally, understand this clearly. Laziness is rarely about inability. It is about tolerated inconsistency. You tolerate small deviations because they seem harmless. But each tolerated deviation teaches your mind that your word is flexible. Over time, you stop trusting yourself. And when self-trust erodes, action feels heavier. Destroy laziness early. Interrupt negotiation fast. Remove emotional reward patterns. Make the future visible. Predecide responses. Protect modest standards relentlessly. You do not need dramatic transformation. You need fewer tolerated compromises. Laziness is not an enemy you defeat once. It is a pattern you either tolerate or interrupt. If you tolerate small compromises, they accumulate quietly. If you interrupt them consistently, you accumulate strength just as quietly. That is the part most people misunderstand. They look for dramatic change. They expect a surge of willpower. But what actually transforms a person is repetition. Discipline is not effort layered on top of a weak identity. It is identity expressed through behavior. When you stop negotiating, when you remove self-licensing, when you connect today's choice to future identity, you are not trying harder. You are redefining who you are in private moments. And that compounds. If you protect one small standard every day, waking when you said you would, beginning work without delay, finishing what you scheduled, you send yourself a message: my word is stable. That stability builds self-respect. Self-respect builds internal authority. Internal authority reduces hesitation. And reduced hesitation weakens laziness at its root. Compounding works in two directions. Repeated compromise compounds into regret. Repeated integrity compounds into confidence. The difference between the two is rarely dramatic action. It is daily enforcement of simple decisions. Responsibility is not heavy when it becomes identity. It becomes automatic. You no longer ask, do I feel like it? You ask, is this aligned with who I am? That shift changes everything. Feelings fluctuate. Identity remains. When discipline becomes part of your self-concept, laziness loses its emotional power. Comfort is no longer persuasive because it conflicts with your standard. You are not resisting comfort aggressively. You are simply not available for patterns that weaken you. Destroying laziness is not about intensity. It is about consistency applied long enough that compromise feels unnatural. Laziness does not destroy you in a single collapse. It erodes you in tolerated moments. Every small delay, every quiet permission, every flexible promise shapes the person you are becoming. If you allow those moments to define you, they will. If you interrupt them consistently, they will fade. You do not need a new personality. You need a firmer standard. Move when you decide, protect what you schedule, remove the reward from avoidance. Over time, your actions begin to match your intentions. The gap closes. Self-trust strengthens. And when self-trust is strong, laziness has no leverage. This is not dramatic. It is deliberate. And deliberate, repeated long enough, becomes irreversible.